Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I feel like I need to catch my breath. I was racing through Johannesburg to try and get here on time because our program director fell sick this morning. So as servants, we always have to be ready to serve. So thank you for your patience, for waiting for me. I'd like to welcome you all and thank you for joining us. This is our third CEO Roundtable. And we're doing it this time in partnership with the Dbsa. I'm very glad that today we have a lady in our midst because as we were looking at the list of people we're going to be talking to, it has just, so far it has only been men and white men only. So today we've got 2 Africans, and well done to the Dbsa for representing the 51%. Hopefully, this is a sign of things to come. We conceptualized this idea of the roundtable some time ago as the Absip NEC because we thought it was important to firstly bring a face to the names that we know of these important institutions that manage very significant capital, and to ask the question, when is the money coming to us? We have been waiting, and perhaps Boitumelo, with your ascension to the throne, when we look at the Dbsa statistics, we'll see more money flowing towards Black-owned and women-owned businesses. No pressure, but I will be coming for coffee and tea every now and then to see how we're doing in that regard. But importantly, Absip was established to drive transformation in the financial services sector, as you know, more than 26 years ago, in 1995. It's many years ago now. And we believe that we have done a great deal of work in terms of at least driving the number of professionals in the sector. We do have some level of representation and diversity. We still are having a debate around inclusivity and equality. So that's really where the discussion is shifting. So today we are hoping to hear from both our leaders about their own perceptions around what transformation is, what it should be, what the role of the Dbsa has been in the past, and hopefully going forward, what it will be in terms of driving transformation, and really what your philosophy as an organization and institution is in that regard. The conversation is said to be uncomfortable, but I don't think it should be comfortable. I think it should be a conversation that we embrace. It is timely. It's been more than 30 years that we've been at it, by the way. And a lot has been done. We have very good stories to tell, but there are very many gaps that we continue to see. What is important, though, is that because we now occupy the ranks of the financial services sector, we actually are in power, believe it or not. And we hold the levers to unlock the opportunities. And the question that we should be answering, or the conversation we should be having as Black professionals today, is to say, how do we change the narrative around transformation? We held a very important session on Friday where we were speaking about mapping the way out of this grey listing as the financial services sector as South Africa. And for us as Absip, it was important that we start driving those conversations. We're tired of knocking at the door. We think we are actually inside, and we might have forgotten that we are inside. Now that we are inside, we need to be driving the conversation and the narrative. We are no longer knocking at the door. We're no longer asking for a seat at the table. We actually have built our own table. We have created our own seats. And I think that's how we should start thinking about what we're going to do going forward. We're no longer knocking. We are really excited and humbled to have the outgoing CEO of Dbsa and ushering in the new CEO. Dbsa has been a big supporter of Absip over the years. We have enjoyed a very good relationship. And again, with Boitumelo on board, I'm sure that she's going to double, if not treble, the support, financial and otherwise, that we have seen from the Dbsa. And we cannot wait to listen to you, to hear your thoughts and just share ideas. And also give us some thoughts on what you think as Absip we need to be doing going forward as we plot or chart a new path around what is transformation today, because it can no longer be about scorecards, it can no longer be about how much money we've spent on enterprise development or training people, but it has to be about how do we significantly change the landscape, how do we change the conversation, how do we drive the conversation as Black leaders in this sector. So before we welcome our guests on stage, and my very capable deputy will lead the panel discussion, I believe that there is a video from the Dbsa, and I'd like to call Ms. Zukiswa Sitole and Dr. Magadlela to introduce, well, before they introduce them, we'll watch the video, and then Zukiswa and Patrick will come and, sorry, not Patrick, Dumisani Magadlela will come and introduce the outgoing CEO and the incoming CEO. Thank you.
Now is the time to bend the arc of history, to plan, to shape, to lay the foundations of our future, a future free of poverty, free of helplessness, free of dependency, a future distinguished by progress, by shared prosperity, by bridging gaps in society, building bridges across our continent for the farmer who needs roads, and for families needing clean water. We build services and infrastructure, building our economy that build identity and belonging, building our continent, building our humanity.
Thank you, Madam. That was beautiful. For someone that came in, rushing in like that, you did an amazing, amazing job. So thank you very much for that. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and those of us, our colleagues and counterparts that are watching or viewing online, welcome to this amazing third, you said, Madam, third roundtable. You should have started here. Yeah. Because this is home to development finance in the true sense of it. So thank you very much, Absip team, for this. The Dbsa was founded in 1983. So this year, in 2023, we are celebrating, who can count here? Yeah? You're thinking about it. It's 40 years of development financing. And if you look closely, you can see our evidence on the ground everywhere where you go in our municipalities around the country and in the region also. So thank you for tuning in to this Absip roundtable. Quick thing, after the video, what you will see is that we are serious about development financing. We talk less about it, so you won't see us all over the place, but you will feel us when you work on development funding, development financing. The economic infrastructure part, the Dbsa, is specific sectors that we're focusing on. And these include information and communication technologies, ICT infrastructure, transport-related infrastructure is what we deal with. You saw in the video, the visuals. Water and sanitation, we know that there are massive backlogs, and Dbsa is key in driving that investment into those sectors. And energy, we all know about energy on that. And then there's social infrastructure that Dbsa is working on. And these include health, education, and human settlements. We are very keen in ensuring that we transform the rest of our populations that have not received that much service since democracy. So Dbsa is in the forefront of that. So we're committed to fair employment opportunities. If you look at our numbers, we have 54% of Dbsa employees are female. So you see what we've done now with our CEO. It's not an accident. It's a plan, a beautiful one, to have the first female black CEO of the Dbsa. So we are excited, the new era for Dbsa's growth. You mentioned transformation. She's gone outside. We don't talk it, we actually do it. So we're a very transformed organization, and you will see that. And we have young people coming into the bank. My boss is here. We had 40 young interns that we recruited a few years ago. They are on board now. So Dbsa, and some of them are here. So Dbsa transformation with its gender, race, age, we are doing it live. And then finally, our commitment to ensuring at least 30% of BBBE companies are appointed. We are working on that. We're actually doing it. We employ very much in compliance with the requirements of the law, which is why we find that we're targeting 51% of women-owned businesses, and we're working towards that. And there are a few other stats that I won't go into at this point. But what I can tell you is that Dbsa is in the forefront of driving transformation in development, development financing, and we are here to collaborate with entities like Absip. These are our, what do you call it, Langa? You said we need to transform from the bottom up. We're doing it right across as Dbsa, and this is why we're here. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dbsa, this third roundtable with Absip. And I'll hand over now to my colleague Zuki to come and introduce our outgoing CEO, Ms. Patrick Dlamini. Zuki, over to you.
I always worry with my voice that projects so much when I have the mic that I'm not going to project to the next building and break your eardrums, but you'll forgive me. Good morning, everybody. My name is Zuki. Good afternoon. Thank you. Wow. Wow. I don't want the day to end, clearly. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Zuki Swatsengiwe Sitole, and it is my pleasure to be here this afternoon. Well, it is often said that the best leaders are those who serve, that leadership is not about being in charge, but it is rather about taking care of the people in your charge. For the past decade, the Dbsa family has become very well acquainted with the practical meaning of what servant leadership is. Mr. Patrick Kulegani Dlamini has been sitting at the helm of this great institution since the year of our Lord, 2012, occupying the position as Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of the Dbsa. Prior to that, he served as the CEO at Air Traffic and Navigation Services Company. Now, it is understood that he was known to be very tough at AT&S Company. But what we as the Dbsa family can surely attest to is that this indeed is a leader who is tough on ensuring that we create equal opportunities for all. He is tough on creating an egalitarian environment without exception, whether you are the cleaner, whether you are the garden manicurist, or the executive with the corner office. He has also occupied the positions of Executive Vice President and General Manager for Cargo at South African Airways, as well as a Business Unit Executive position at Transnet. His passion for economic development is undoubtedly coursing through his veins. Now, there is one person who, since Patrick joined the Dbsa, has also become a very endeared member of this Dbsa family. This is his late grandmother, Ukoko. who, although she herself was not afforded the opportunity to get educated, but very well understood the consequence of education and instilled in Patrick a very keen and curious sense for learning. And so Patrick has proven over the years to be an erudite person, a very studious philomath. I'm bringing out the English now. Yes. A studious philomath who holds an MSc in Global Finance from New York University, Stern School of Business. You understand why the English has to come out. A Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Durban, Westville. So he's also completed an executive development program from the University of Witwatersrand Business School and an advanced executive program from Kellogg School of Management. Now, if you are to heed the words, live as though you were to die tomorrow, and learn as though you were to live forever, Patrick indeed bears true testament to this word. Not only is he a dedicated scholar of the Japanese philosophy Kaizen, which means continuous improvement, but this is a leader who personifies and in all his works has made the African philosophy of Ubuntu his magnum opus. Having learned almost each and everyone's names within the organization, he takes the time to see you and to greet you with such a humility that's inspiring and contagious. Of all the legacies that he leaves the Dbsa family with, one will forever be resounding. Umntu ngumntu ngabantu. You are because I am, and I am because you are. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome into the stage our outgoing Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of the Dbsa, Mr. Patrick Kulegani Sibalukhulu Udlamini.
How do you follow that? I mean, where do you even start? Wow. Another round. That is amazing. Wow. I love it. I'm not going to try that. So our incoming CEO, don't expect that. We'll give you that at the end. When you've served your 10 years, we'll go there. So she's going to start preparing now for that. So, well, Zugi, thank you so much, and welcome to the stage, Babu Dlamini. That was definitely honorable. So thank you very much for that. Mine is an easy one. Then I don't have to do the rest of that because she's starting her journey. So I've got to give you a piece of her bio for you to get to know. One thing I can tell you for sure is that we are privileged in the Dbsa to have leadership that really steps up to the plate. So Ms. Butumela Musako is not just a, what do you call CAs, bean counters, some of you? She's not that. She's a true leader in that. And she has been a solid executive and experienced chartered accountant with over 22 years working experience. And what we know is that she's, besides being one of our very own, she has traveled around the world, she's worked in different organizations and gathered valuable experience for her to be in the position that she's in now. She's stepping up to be Dbsa CEO after those 22 plus years of experience. And she has been for over 15 years in the financial services sector. So she knows what she's talking about when she steps up to say, I'm now taking over, I'm leading in this organization. So I'm gonna give you just a brief on her education and then one last piece about her inspiration, where she draws it from. She initially joined the Dbsa in 2013 And the roles that she's played over time have changed, but they've stayed in the financial services sector. What you will know is that she started serving in the Dbsa as a finance back office support manager. This was in 2013. You remember those days? Yeah. And thereafter served as general manager manager finance reporting to the CFO. So she was close to the CFO's office from then as the general manager for finance. We used to have Dbsa positions called general manager, GMs, and then later on others. And prior to rejoining the bank in 2018 as CFO, Boitumelo worked at the South African Bureau of Standards as the CFO for SABS. How long did you leave? Were you away for? 2.5 years. Were they painful, those years?
Yes.
Good years.
Yes.
But you had to come back home.
Yes.
Yeah. We're glad that you did that. Thank you very much for that. So what you will know is that she has an advanced management program certificate from Harvard. You know, Harvard produces some of the best, right? Yeah. And then she's done a BBBE management development program certificate with UNISA. So in terms of management, she's got it all done. And then a higher diploma in auditing, a postgraduate diploma in accounting, and a BCom in accounting, all from UCT. One of our best, UCT is the best university on the continent, we know that. It's among the top universities globally anyway. And then moving up from CFO role, she's coming into a position that, in my view, might be easy for her, right? Because, yeah, she's not going to try and follow up the footsteps. She's going to chart her own path. That's what true leadership is about. You don't try and emulate someone else. You've got to do you and be yourself. And that's what we see in our incoming CEO. She's her own person. And one of her greatest inspirations is her mother. And what she says is that her mother taught her or inspired her to be her own person, to live with integrity and have the dignity to be authentic with who she is, and then with faith and strength. And those are things that she leads by. And she inspires those around her. Though if you've met her, you would know that she's unassuming. And this is the CEO that is incoming into the Dbsa. So ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome to the stage Boitumelo Mosapi. To you.
Oh, thank you. You know, this is quite unfair. Yeah. So please, can you come and introduce me also? You know, just to get it out of the way, Kankramocracy. Higgy Haga. So I've used up now all my big English words, and I think we are drawn. So, yeah, no, yay. No, thank you so much for those introductions. And thank you so much, outgoing CEO, incoming CEO, for making time to have this conversation with us. I think we will start the conversation. Maybe let me start with you, ladies first. Ma'am, tell us about your journey to becoming CEO. And I think one of the questions that I like to ask is, what have been some of your favorite mistakes that you've made along the journey that have come with learning and have helped you understand that it's not wrong to make mistakes?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to be on set with you, Langa. Thank you, Bolo, as president of Absip, for this opportunity. And I would also like to congratulate the organization for all you have achieved over the years. It is commendable. How far back do I go? Maybe little snippets, okay? The first person to ever employ me was my grandfather at the age of 13. So my first experience as a bean counter was counting money and doing wages in my grandfather's business on Saturdays. The second thing is he also made me count the church offering. You know, he was a leader in church, and I had to do the deposits, even though they would count the money and do the deposit slip, because he used to bank it, he used to make me recount. So all that early training, you know, actually came from him, you know. So he definitely, you know, and do this or whatever, but he's a father of 5 girls and 1 boy. So he didn't even have much of a choice, but he did believe, you know, he believed in us. So what then happened is I went to study at UCT, did accounting there, and the inspiration for the profession was actually, you know, came from my mom. My mom used to be a member of the BMF, and she would go and attend all these meetings there, and she would meet, you know, accountants. And my initial plan was to be an engineer growing up in Buputatswana, because that is what was, you know, common at that time. So I then, you know, my mom inspired me to join the profession, went to UCT, from UCT joined Ernst & Young, did my articles with Ernst & Young. And then from Ernst & Young, and I think that's where you really have the first exposure on transformation, because I was on a big client at that time, and you walk in, you are the only black person in the team. And I remember asking Stefan, I said, Stefan, when I walk through the door, what do you see? He says, you need to prove yourself. And I said, Stefan, you wrote the same exam I wrote with you. We both wrote board, we both went through university, so what proving do I have to do? I said, let's agree. I see you as you and you see me as me. And let's work together. So one of the things that I could say that has been, you know, my learnings is to put things on the table. You know, when we discuss these things openly, we can actually move forward. From my article years, I then went into, and then I became a manager. My articles was in telecoms, retail products, and then I moved on to financial services. When I started my articles, financial services was only for a certain demographic. When you were allocated, you know, a division to do your articles, it was not the option at that time. You know, even if you might have an interest, it's like, no, you know, these are the people that can do this sort of work. You know, so joined Citigroup, and from Citigroup, I then went into venture capital, from venture capital to Dbsa, SABS, and now, you know, then Dbsa again. I think for me, I don't see mistakes as mistakes. You know, as a Christian, I believe all things work together for good. You know, because even our mistakes end up being our greatest opportunities. You know, when I had to decide between joining 2 venture capital entities, like it was either a big private equity or a small venture capital, I went for the venture capital, the smaller one, you know, not billions, if, you know, 100 million or so, went for that one. It was, to somebody, it might have seemed like a mistake, but for me, it was the greatest opportunity, because that's when I actually learned a lot about visionary leadership.
Okay, thank you. And maybe, Mr. Dlamini, if I can pose the same question to you, except maybe a lot of it has already been mentioned by Zugi. Yes. Because now I'm curious about your grandmother in particular. But what are some of the lessons that she shared with you that brought you here? And also, what have been some of your favorite mistakes that you've made along the way?
Sure. Thank you, Langa. Madam President, thank you for bringing Absip to Dbsa and to the leadership of Absip and members of Absip, Dbsa colleagues. Really, Uzugi always floors me. So, thank you deeply, Suzuki. My grandmother was my greatest inspiration, actually. It becomes even more special because if I can share with you, she took me from my mother at the age of 2 weeks and breastfed me for 2.5 years. So through and through, she was my mother. And I grew up actually knowing her as my mother and my grandfather as my father, my mother as my sister. So you can imagine how long it takes then to accept that reality. I think I was in standard 2 when I started hearing people saying, "This is your mother." I said, my mother that's my mother. and I think it so happened that she had 4 daughters. So my mother was the second eldest. So I guess my arrival also gave her some fulfillment of sort, but this is my imagination. I don't know if it really was the case, in the sense that she then was gifted with this boy that she took as her own and nurtured as such. And she really, throughout my growing up, she was always preparing me to be independent. She was always preparing me to stand for what I believe in. I remember our walks sometimes where we would sit and she would show me an eagle and the baby eagle or the chicks, why they were constantly flapping their wings. And she was taking me through these lessons that is school, because one day you must be able to fly. So you're going to school, you are doing exactly that. And she said, watch it, observe it. One day the parents will bring food and they'll fly to the nearby tree. That little one will have to fly to where the parents are. It will be reluctant in the beginning, but hunger will make it to fly because the parents believe it is ready. And it might fumble, but it will come right. So I always remember those images. They are deeply conjured in my mindset. But what also moved me somewhat was in her last moment, she was coming from hospital and she realized that she was not going to be able to walk a further 10 kilometers to get home. So she asked a passing by child to call my lower primary school principal, it was Mr. Mavuso, to come through. And luckily he was home, so Mr. Mavuso came through and she said, "Mr. Mavuso, I want you to take this message to Ukulegani and my 2 daughters. 2 daughters were her last 2 daughters after my mother." And she said, "Please tell Ukulegani never to stop studying, to keep on applying himself. And tell my 2 daughters, Bonangani, Notembi, to look after him and support him in his education." Those were her last words, and she passed away. There and then. So, when then you get given this message, it stays with you for as long as you live, because you understand this person, in as uneducated as she was, she has never been to school in her life, yet she believed so much in education. When President Mandela said education is the greatest equalizer, for me, I understood exactly what that means, because it said your future generation will never be the same again. So that is the gift of love from my grandmother and an inspiration that she gave to me to really being the best I possibly can be. And the other thing, growing up in my household, we always had people that we'd never seen before or met before, that were not even related to us, that were part of the family. They would come and they would forever live until they die, and then be buried by my grandmother and my grandfather as members of the family, because we never knew where they came from. And most of them actually came from the Eastern Cape, Abo Qikga, and they never went back home. But then my mother got married to my stepfather, Ungongo actually, my stepfather's surname and my siblings. And he had also originally come from the Eastern Cape, and he came to live, and my mother got married to that family. And when he came to live, before my mother, he lived with my parents. And when he grew up, they then actually helped him set up his own family, not far from my grandparents. But now this is my stepfather's father. And then only to find that his son will see this dark beauty in my mother and fell for her. But before my grandmother passed away, he actually had gone to my stepfather and my grand stepmother. What do you call it?
Grandmother.
That mother now, who's a step
Step-grandma.
the step grandma. My apologies. You know, the thing is, in our languages, we don't have these steps. To us, it's just grandmother. So I'm trying to use the Queen's language so that people can appreciate what I'm talking about. So that's what happened. But strangely enough, my grandmother's mother was a Lamin. I don't know what my mother did. So the affinity from my grandmother was also maybe due to the fact that she comes from this clan name. She was a Lamini as well. So I was super special. My great-grandmother was a Lamin. Super special in every sense of the word. But really, for me, my upbringing has always been driven by being the best that you can possibly be. Respect other people, love other people, because when you do that, they will love you back, they will respect you back, and be who you are, and always do the best you possibly can. For when you do that, you have no regrets. That's what I've tried to practice and to live throughout my life, and I intend continuing doing just that. Thank you, Lang.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yeah. Okay. Now I understand why you. Yeah. Okay. But maybe let's then come inward and start a little bit of a conversation about the Dbsa, infrastructure focused. Tell us how, as the Dbsa, you have enabled works of inclusion in terms of those who are historically disadvantaged. I think one of the indictments that is constantly made about financial services is that we like to build Sentin and we forget to go home where we come from if you look like us. And what has the Dbsa done, and what will the Dbsa be looking to do in that space of inclusion, of inclusivity through financing?
Okay, so maybe CE can answer what Dbsa has done, and I'll answer what Dbsa is going to do.
Yeah.
Oh, my word. No, thank you, incoming CE. Really, I think as the bank, we believed in truly bending the arc of history towards shared prosperity. Because that's what gives meaning to what we exist for and what we're all about. So as the bank, we've been grappling about how can we be optimal in bringing about economic inclusion and bringing about transformation in the true sense of the word. And what we have done as the bank, we really have come up with a number of products that talk to economic inclusion. Through IDD, we are sitting actually at more than 65% women-owned businesses that actually we have enabled and allowed, and we even came up with a working capital of about 250 million rand that we advance to these small and coming construction companies to make sure that they can be able to deal with their working capital requirements and be able to focus on delivering the work that is expected of them. But beyond that, and we have actually gone beyond that, but I would leave that for the incoming CEO in terms of what we've just come up with to look at funding BEE deals much more strongly. We have done quite a lot in a number of sectors, in the energy sector, healthcare sector, in telecoms. We want to do more. And the incoming CEO will tell you what is it that actually that we've just had recently approved at the BCIC, the Board Credit and Investment Committee, which is a subcommittee of the board. And also it was approved at EXCO and then proposed to BCIC. Again, because we really wanted to bring about meaningful transformation and meaningful economic inclusion for South Africa. We have massive challenges. But over and above that, it has also been how do we work with other institutions to really try and do more. And in some of the, was it 500 million that we have actually approved that we will work together with NEF to try and fund up and coming SMEs and see if that actually can be able then to grow and do much more. We would love to give it in billions because we really believe that we must do the best we possibly can. There are massive challenges. We got into the new era. The DFIs could not fund many BE deals, but we have done, actually it was quite interesting that it was a 51% BE IPP for energy. We have done so many. We have funded the community trust in the IPP space, the independent power producers. We have funded the BEE portion of the IPP. When you hear about the 250 billion rand and more, Dbsa has been right in the thick of it. We were also the incubator of the IPP office as well, and many people do not know. And we have seen how that has been able to bring on board a number of black participants. But we want to do more. Really, I think there is more that we need to look at how we can do as the DFIs. We are the policy instrument of the state, and therefore we really have to do much more. We decided to get into the infrastructure delivery space because we were seeing these the political fault lines that our government was contending with and battling with, and hence you have built schools, we have built social housing, we have built roads, we have built dams, and we continue to do much more that is supposed to be done by government, even facilities management. Our IDD colleagues actually now are the biggest players in that space, but we then are also contending with a number of challenges because there is so much cry for localization and inclusion that we now have to see how every 30% of any project in any locality has got to talk to the local community in terms of women, youth, and local communities as well. So these are the kinds of things that we've been able to do. And I'm not saying these are enough. We are way, way, way below where we're supposed to be as a country. And as the bank, we have committed ourselves that we want to do more. Now we are saying we actually acknowledge the difficulty that BEE or entrepreneurs are experiencing in terms of the equity contribution to deals. As the bank, we have taken a decision to fund those equity contribution that are required of BEE players. So again, it is part of bending the arc of history towards shared prosperity. It is going to be a process, we appreciate that, but it is something that we really want to do as much as we possibly can, let alone promoting our very own in terms of the skill sets and our own employment equity candidates. In the bank, I think we really stand quite tall amongst many within the country to have done that, because we want them to be the best that they possibly can be. We send them to the best institutions, as you heard of the incoming CEO in the world, and we are not apologetic about that, because we want them to believe that they are the best and they can do the best. So we will stop at nothing in making sure that we continue doing that. Thank you.
Madam CE, what does the future hold?
So you can feel the pressure, ne?
Yeah.
Langa, you know, I have the opportunity to lead this great organization from a strong base. And, you know, my CE has already alluded to some of those aspects. But you see, when you get raised in an organization to aspire to value-based visionary leadership, it is incredible. You know, in that when you look at it, all starts from the inside. Remember, you cannot give what you don't have. And when CE talks about unapologetic and deliberate development of people, and that is the biggest investment he has made. He's actually made an investment in every single one of us. When it comes to, because you know, it's about people get experience, people get enlightened through opportunities that they are given. And I think here at the Development Bank of Southern Africa, we give opportunities to our investment professionals, to everybody. And that is one of our biggest strengths. Our institutional strength is our competitive advantage. The people of Dbsa is our advantage. And this is the investment that we have seen made, you know, by CE, you know, over the years. Now, where are we going from here? Did I mention that ever since he joined, he more than doubled the balance sheet? So we will just be throwing the accolades, right? So it starts from the inside. And when you look at the inside, we also, the strength in diversity. We are a diverse team of professionals in demographic and in expertise. So we have the ability and the capability to come up with solutions that are suitable for our various communities. He mentioned IDD. We are a bank, but we do infrastructure delivery. We have a division that actually, you know, implements infrastructure on behalf of government departments and state-owned entities. Why? Through visionary leadership is how do we as an organization, seeing a gap, how do we augment the capacity of state? And that's why we formed it. We know the gaps, and we will continue to fill those gaps. How are we going to do that? Focus on building our township economies. And it's important. One of our biggest challenges as Black people, and I'm going to be, you know, open about that, is actually access to capital. how do, and it doesn't mean, and this is what I'll touch on when I talk about Absip and what we could do later. It's access to capital. How do we make, capital access at different levels of community? At the township economy level, at the corporate level, and this is the support, as he has mentioned, we're going to partner. We are partnering with the, our sister DFIs, and also creating facilities within the bank. He mentioned the equities products that we are offering. We also have what we call a high impact investment portfolio. What does that do? One of the things is, just as much as we have inherited wealth that we still don't have access to, by the way, it is important for us to create wealth. Now, this high impact investment portfolio is actually looking at how do we support transactions that come up with non-traditional type solutions. It's not necessarily looking at prototypes or anything like that, but it's actually looking at more of like a VC type, funding, looking at non-traditional type solutions that support the sectors that we support. And it is important that, we actually make that known, because this is a facility that women can take advantage of. This is a facility that the youth can take advantage of. And this is a facility that actually says, let's bring African solutions, to our challenges. So not only do we do the traditional stuff, we also have this facility that looks at non-traditional stuff. In addition to that, we will be focusing on the just transition as an organization, and supporting our shareholder and our government with a just transition, obviously with a mindset of enhancing energy security over and above everything else. And we will be also supporting our municipalities. It is the smallest form of service delivery to the people of this country, and it remains critical to us as an institution to continue and support our municipalities. So those are the two key highlights that I'll mention for now.
Okay. I'll pose a question and either of you can take it. South Africa and grey listing. What has that meant for you as a financial services institution? And what do you see as some of the challenges that lie ahead for the bank?
It's a very interesting and challenging time. It's unfortunate that actually we have been grey listed, but you can understand where it is coming from, because there is a serious concern about money laundering. And if you recall, I think a few years back, there was a steering group headed by our former president, President Thabo Mbeki, that was looking at the financial leakages from the African economies to the rest of the world, and that we are losing hundreds of billions in dollar terms as a continent through money laundering, through corruption, and through all manner of wrong ways. But as the world, we need to start saying, how do we tighten and put together internal controls and compliance controls to make sure that our economies do not end up funding things that actually will become dangerous to us at a later stage, because there is also the possibility of money laundering to support terrorist organizations. So there has been a number of underground studies, and they found that we could have done better on a number of fronts. But we are grateful that National Treasury has been working with the Financial Action Task Force, they call it, right? To try and really plug up the holes, and to really make sure that we strengthen our controls as a country, and to make sure that we are accountable for each and every cent that comes in and leaves our economy, and that we're comfortable that actually it is going to the right cause. So for me, what it means for the economy and for DBSA, it says there's going to be extended and enhanced due diligence on many things that we do. It might cost us more, it might take longer, and for us to access foreign capital, we will be turned upside down to satisfy those international funders and partners to make sure that this money is coming from the right areas, is coming to do the right things, and when it leaves our country, it is going to the right things. So it's the pain that we will have to go through, but at the same time, it will mean that the cost of funding is going to go up for many things in South Africa, and also for ourselves as the DFIs. But it is something that we're committed, just like the government has announced, in correcting as soon as possible. But we will have to work together as the various actors of this economy, the banks, the law firms, the tax authorities, the business people, everyone, to make sure that we take our country to where it rightfully belongs. Because this is the last thing that we want. We want to make sure that we are seen as the responsible country. We are seen as a country that actually does things the right way. So I think we really will be up to the task to try and correct this. It's very, very, very important. We owe it to ourselves. I can't keep quiet if I see something wrong. I can't allow Team Dbsa to be associated with things actually that actually are compromising the standing and the stature of our country. So that's how, in a nutshell, I look into this, and that's how I think there's going to be definitely an impact, but we will have to do the best we can to come out of it. I don't think it helps to cry over it, but it is here. Let's deal with it the best way we can.
Okay. Madam C, would you like to add?
You know, what I'd like to add is the bigger, just to add, it's who ultimately pays for all of that. And the person who ultimately pays for the impact in all these costs is you and I. It's the ordinary South Africans who walk these streets who end up having to bear that cost. And this goes back to what he mentioned, is that we as professionals in our various different spheres, it is important for us to remain accountable to the South African citizen in whatever we are doing, in whatever spheres we find ourselves. Because at the end of the day, it is the South African citizen that pays for this impact.
Yeah, I think one would argue that beyond the grey listing, there's a lot of things that are currently not working in South Africa. Add to that Eskom, and we're grateful the power has not gone off. And also add to that Transnet and its issues, and we have crime and etc. So let's say next year is an elective year, and you ran for president and you won. What would be your 3 priority areas that you think you would drive to turn the country around? Just in case I run and I take your ideas.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting question. No, definitely, I think if you ask anyone even in this room, they'll say fix Excom. Each and every household experience Excom, and the pain that actually the load shedding provides to each and every one of us, especially the poorest of the poor, who can't afford to have solar panels and backup generators in their homes. So fix Eskom as soon as possible. Fix Transnet. It is the heartbeat of the economy in terms of logistics. Take the trucks off the road. Make sure that the Transnet freight rail is optimally functional, and fix the crime rate in our country. People will not leave this country. We want to feel safe. We want to live with dignity in our homes. We don't want to hear and read about and see a GBV in our country. We do not want to see children being abused in our country. We do not want to live in fear. We want to live like other nations in other parts of the world live. You hardly see not even a picket fence. So, and yet here it has become a foreign concept. We live behind high walls. We live with security everywhere. So really for me, those are the three things I would say let's fix. I know that the water issue is going to be attended to as well, because it is the next challenge that is coming. Because we're a water scarce country. If infrastructure is collapsing in municipalities, and if roads infrastructure are collapsing in municipalities, things are going to get worse for the ordinary citizens.
Madam C.
I think, I'm going to turn your question on its head, Langa, because there are countries that run with an unstable government, but they continue to run. And the people that make it run are you and I. So I think we need to be reflecting as South Africans, because it's important for us to say, what do we do in our own little spaces to address these challenges that the CE has alluded to? And by that, what do I mean? As Bitumelo, who's taking on the CEO role of the Development Bank of Southern Africa, I need to do my job. My team and I, my excellent, exceptional Dbsa team, has to continue on the trajectory of accelerating infrastructure development in this country. And they need to do it well, in an inclusive manner. What do you do as an employee who sits at another state-owned entity? Do your job well. Do it with excellence. And if we all had to do our part in our areas of influence, it will make a very, very big difference. As private sector, always pointing fingers at government and state-owned entities, guess where the other fingers are pointing at? So it actually, requires greater collaboration between the private sector and the public sector to actually, get some of these solutions done. So for me, it's really going back to you and I, Langa. And CE, I said to him, he's not retiring. I said, CE, short break, only a short break, short break. And then we will be expecting more from him as well.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got some questions from online before I go to the audience in the room. The first one says, how have you managed to run a well-run state-owned enterprise? Because hardly many of them exist.
Yeah, very interesting. I think we remain true to ourselves, and we remained true to our values. Courage was amongst them. Integrity and honesty was amongst them. Zero tolerance for corruption. And we really made sure that we look after our own and so that they can be able to give the best. Because when you demonstrate care and belief in your own, they will be able actually to make sure that they play their part. So I think we are forever grateful to the men and women of this bank and our partners who really believed in this brand of Dbsa and making sure that they do the best they can to make both themselves and the country proud.
you know, CE is the epitome of ethical leadership, and I think that is ethical leadership, strong governance, strong leadership, in the boards that we've had as well, and our ESCO teams, and Team DBSA as a whole, and it is that's it's making the right decisions and doing what's in the best interest of the organization. And he makes those decisions. And when you make decisions that in the best interest of the organization, they are in the best interest of a South African citizen.
Okay. I don't know if there are questions from the floor. If anyone would like to pose a question to the CE. There's a question over here. And then there's another one at the back there.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Comfort Matoti, and I am from Infrastructure South Africa and also a MANCO member of BMF. What an interesting discussion. We hardly in government experience such smooth transitions and such discussions between those who are going out and coming in. Those who follow all the reshuffles will tell you it's in and out. And I want to attest that this tradition showcased to us why Dbsa is so stable as a public entity. I think this question can go both to the incoming and the outgoing CEO. So in Infrastructure South Africa, I am the deputy lead of Infrastructure Pipeline in the Free State. And one of the issues we have experienced there, number one, is that you have a lot of SMMEs that want to rise. But because of lack of capital and lack of entities like the Dbsa visible there, they find themselves even merging with big entities, and they find themselves as units, as departments, and not really unleashing their great potential. The coming CEO has alluded on her great experience on venture capital, and I would like to really get a snippet on that specific perspective. What would be your approach in unleashing that potential? And then the second one, it goes into the stability of providing infrastructure, from planning infrastructure to getting collaborations. We're working very well with the infrastructure fund, I have to attest, and rolling out the infrastructure. But the most important one, I think, where we are failing is the maintenance of infrastructure. And as we have alluded, even the communities have to play a vital role. But how do we then bring that perspective? Because the communities tend to distance themselves from a clinic that is built because probably they were not part of it. They only want to utilize the services. Where are we seeing this? When they are protesting, it's very easy for them to set the clinic alight. So how do we bring that perspective that as Dbsa and all entities that are invested in rolling out infrastructure, when after we have rolled it out, we may actually make the people to feel as part of it, not only having to benefit, even if it's social infrastructure or it's economic infrastructure, but they have to be part of it, guarding it with their bodies and souls, because we don't want to see ourselves going one step forward and 10 steps backward. The last one is, I did see you have unlocked infrastructure funding of about 2.1 billion in struggling municipalities. I'm really fascinated to see an increase each and every year, but maybe just to think way above the capabilities. Will it be possible under your leadership to see a double increase of that? Because you have a lot of migration of people moving out of these municipalities because of lack of rollout infrastructure into the cities, where we then come and become squashed. That is where even crime actually has an opportunity, because there's actually a lot of people who are really trying to find themselves around, and you also have opportunists that then take that opportunity. But if maybe we can look into those struggling municipalities and unleash the potential, probably we can mitigate that migration, and probably we can exploit a lot of opportunities available. Thank you.
Thank you.
I shall defer to the incoming
Yeah.
CEO through you, Lang.
Okay.
Incoming CEO. I think when we look at our communities around issues of maintenance, it goes back to ownership. And when people don't feel that they own things, it's easy for them to actually destroy things. And one of the things that we do exceptionally well in our infrastructure delivery division is we have a lot of social facilitation. Before we build the school, before we build the clinic, there's engagement with the communities on what this means and that this is your infrastructure. I mean, no one can build their own house, right? So it is important that as we roll out infrastructure, we also work on the mindset shift around ownership, that we own this infrastructure. It is not just somebody, it is our infrastructure. And in that way, we will take better care of it. And this doesn't just go back to building the infrastructure. When you talk about maintenance, it talks to the contractor who's hired to do the maintenance. When the contractor does the maintenance, can they do an excellent job? Because that infrastructure belongs to them. Not a shoddy, below quality work, but good work. And when there is that sense of ownership, it increases better quality of service from our contractors and a better maintenance and taking care by communities. Then you won't walk into the clinic gate and if you're having a wrap or something, you just throw it. You would look for the bin and you would put it in there. It's those little things that make a big difference. When you look at when we had riots, there were areas where the communities barricaded and said, not in our backyard. Not in our backyard. This is not happening in our backyard. And that's what we need. And that is something that the politicians will not help us. It's something that we need to resolve as people in this country, to see that, this is our stuff. It's my road. It's my clinic. It's my school. And that's going to be, that's important. The second thing around venture capital, I've already, mentioned, and I think CE has also touched on the various initiatives and partnerships, because remember, we can't do it on our own, and that's why we have partners, strategic partners, our sister DFIs and other organizations that can actually, enable us to do, to support communities with funding. So the high impact investment portfolio that I have mentioned can enable us to do that, and also the partnerships that we have with SMME organizations, so that we can then provide access. I don't know if I've covered all your questions. I think I have. Yeah. Oh, what you want to see more of in municipalities? We play a critical role in and along the value chain. We help municipalities plan. We provide them with project preparation funds. We fund, and we also maintain, because there are those that come to us through the IDD division and say, can you do maintenance for us for these facilities? So we play along the value chain. One of the key strategic objectives that we have is partner with a district. So here we actually looking at greater impact that you are alluding to, where we go to a district with various municipalities, and through the various support that we, through planning, project preparation, we will be working with that municipalities and offering the range of these, support and products for greater impact. For instance, I mean, we support municipalities with asset care, with revenue enhancement. So those are the things, that we do and will continue to do more of for greater impact. Another key thing that I'd like to highlight is, when you look at our government infrastructure plan, it's usually over a 3-year period, while the underlying asset is over a longer period of time. And to accelerate infrastructure in municipalities, we will also we will be doing front loading as well, so that they can accelerate infrastructure implementation. The last thing I'm going to mention is that through our infrastructure fund, one of the key objectives there is to actually, leverage fiscal money to actually get access to greater private sector participation in infrastructure development. And there's a lot of projects in the pipeline, as from coming from Dbsa, and we will be looking at greater impact there as well. Last. It's about institutional building at municipalities. And that is something that at the center of this partner with a district we will be building, so that we ensure that our municipalities have, strong governance processes, that insulate them to a certain extent from, political interference.
Yeah, but I think she covered just about anything. And comfort comes from Dbsa, and we work very well with them. But I think what will also be important will be, how do we make sure that we stem out, is it the right word? English.
Yeah,
Where you stem out
we hope so.
the greed and corruption in our government departments. Because today, tenders are given because people are going with the expectation of some money flowing to those guys. And sometimes you hear stories where people get woken up midnight because the money has gone into their bank accounts and people are coming for their cuts. And these people know we cannot keep quiet when such things happen. We cannot keep quiet when we have so much rot.
Yeah.
Rot.
Yeah.
In our system. So we really, it is something that I sincerely hope that the pride of our people is going to come forth and say, not in our name, we are not going to be party to this. Sometimes you see how roads and potholes, the service providers coming in to take care of potholes, he attends to pothole 1, pothole 3, pothole 6, pothole 10. And you see that these people have actually were here in less than an hour. Yet they decided not to do a proper job. This is what actually the incoming CEO is talking about. That let's do proper, but then let's supervise our service providers. Because you say to yourself, what was happening here? No, these guys are saying, no, we're creating jobs for the next time. That's why you must leave other potholes not filled. So that, and at the same time, the infrastructure continuously disintegrate. Before you know, that's why every time, wherever you drive, now you see that roads are being rebuilt. Because we did not do asset care. Maintenance 101, look after your assets, they will last you longer and you will be able to save a lot of money. So we need to really start believing in ourselves. It can't be that the infrastructure that works is only that is in certain demographics, in their hands. Because if you look at it, today, look at how many metros that actually are still optimally functional. On which one that is. You drive there, you will see service delivery. It's not because other metros and other municipalities are not being allocated and given money. is because others, and there is no leadership, there is no supervision, people are looking away. And money is being wasted, and greed is at the center of this administration. It just cannot be, and it cannot be acceptable that we compromise the lives and dignity of our people to the extent that actually we have done. I just wanted to add that to see.
Dr. Isaac, and then the president.
Bababul Dlamini, when we were battling with the English word, I wanted to say, refer to Zukiso.
Yes.
Coming back to the issue of building capacity within the municipality, how are you going to navigate that space, especially because even the people that work there, they're employed by these politicians. And there's always a revolving door in and out. Because I think the current model of local government, that issue needs to be addressed at the core of what we deal with. Because you don't have professionals who are in the municipalities who had to do their own job without the politicians actually standing on their way. Because they're the ones that need to pass the budget and all sort of stuff. So I think that's an issue that somehow maybe you've got ideas of how you're going to be to deal with it. The other issue is government has got these huge infrastructure programs that they don't have capacity to monitor and manage. What is the role of Dbsa in those? I mean, in Limpopo, they've been building a water project for how many years now? And the dam is next door. People who are next door to that dam don't even have water. So what role do you play in those? Because I suppose the intellectual capacity sits here. The skills sits here. But what is your role in collaboration with government to be able to make sure that those projects actually don't last for 10 years if they could have lasted 3 years at least?
Okay, can I ask that we take the last two questions in the front and then we respond to them at once? Madam President, the question here. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question which is probably related to Dr. Isaac's, but I will park it for now and come back to it. I liked what the incoming CE said about what we as individual South Africans do in our own corner. Because I think it's a very important concept for us to start embracing, because after all, this is our country. And as things fall apart, we don't have the luxury of pointing fingers at politicians or anybody like that. I did say in my opening remarks that sipagati, right? Meaning that we now wield the power. We've got the levers to make the changes that we need to make. So I'm glad that we are starting to hear that coming out. What I wanted to emphasize is that there has been a shift in the type of black entrepreneur from 1994 to today. We are now no longer seeking, we're no longer seeking to buy 5% of Standard Bank and therefore looking for equity checks. We are building our own businesses. What we are, however, continue to struggle with is a sufficient allocation of capital, because now that we are within, we are there in terms of the sector has become black in terms of face, but the wealth is not yet black. But because we are there and you guys are sitting in the positions that you are in, you now have the pipeline that you can start directing capital towards, so that we can then in turn go and do what we need to do in our communities and things like that. So I'm glad to hear you talk, incoming CE, about what you're doing on the SME funding front and VCs and things like that. Those are the things we need to see more of and hear more about. I didn't know until today that the Dbsa does that. So maybe I would urge the Dbsa to talk more about what you're doing there. but to also be even bolder than what you've been in terms of directing capital there, because there are a lot of players in that space. We are there, we are waiting, we want to deploy capital in townships, in rural areas, so that we can start building our economies in local communities and not in Sandton. So I just thought it's important to underline the importance of what we're doing there. So I'm coming for coffee, as I said, to talk about this. And then the question that is probably related to Dbsa is around, I've been spending a lot of time talking to the mining sector, and one of the things that they decry is, with their SLPs, they're required to work with local economic development, people. So these are municipalities and local government people to execute on their social and labor plans. And a lot of that is underpinned by economic development activities. And they do say that firstly, there's too much reliance on government and community on the mining sector, on the mining companies, which is somewhat unfair. It seems to be unfair because government is supposed to do their bit. But the biggest issue is the lack of capacity by the local government people to then help them to execute. And I'm listening to you talking about capacity building and skill development, and I'm wondering whether the Dbsa does actually, in those instances, work with mining companies and the local economic development offices in those communities to do the capacity building and all those other things. And the importance of this is that actually a lot of money is being thrown into these areas, but we lose it because it's given to people who do not have the right type of skills when it comes to planning, when it comes to execution, when it comes to monitoring and quality control and things like that. Instead of the Dbsa going in on its own, is there an opportunity to partner with those kinds of initiatives to make sure that we get a big bang for our buck, as it were? Thanks.
Oh, yes. My question is for the outgoing CE. I'm very much interested in the kind of landscape you have built around gender inclusion in the bank. There were quite a number of stats being thrown around, and of course the incoming CE is female, and that makes us happy. What intentional steps did you take to ensure that that is actually something that the bank realizes, at least in your tenure?
And I think the last question from online, maybe I'm online, is what next, Mr. Outgoing CEO? Where to from here?
Okay. Do I start? Or the...
No, let me touch
Thank
on
you.
the municipality question. Firstly, when we looked at partner with a district, it's informed by years of experience in working in the municipal space. In that initially we would offer different solutions for different municipalities. And with partner with a district, we're saying let's consolidate our efforts for greater impact. And one of the key requirements on this was willing coalition. We are not coming to you and saying, this is the solution. Because the element of ownership is important in us building this. And commitment. You need to own the solution. You need to be committed to it. We actually went through a process where the municipalities would, actually, apply. We made, we encourage municipalities to come to us to then say, I would want to work with you to do this. And many have come to fore, showing that, these willing coalitions are necessary. Because remember, you don't want to throw pearl at swine. You don't want to invest the time, you don't want to invest resources in a municipality where the leadership is not committed. So that is the first key requirement when we partner with a district. It's a marriage. We say our vows. I'm committed, yes. Municipality, Dbsa committed, yes. Let's do this marriage. It's not, I'm coming, I'm forcing you into something. It's a marriage, it's vows of commitment. And that commitment is, let's accelerate infrastructure, let's provide service delivery for the communities that we serve. And I agree with Sispolo. We can, it's partnerships are a big part of it. And those are the, we are willing to work with partners. The more of us are there to actually make sure that this happens, the better. So we're always willing to work with partners.
Yeah, today I think it's quite important that for me it's a no-brainer that we have to optimize our human capital. We can only do right when you believe that each and every one of us must be at his or her best. And therefore, we need to make sure that we give the right support for everyone in the organization to be the best that they can. It was never actually a special treatment, but it was more to say, here is the support, we believe in you, be the best that you possibly can be. We are here to support you, we are your cheerleaders. I think that is very important. It's a very important messaging to any person to know that people believe in you, people will give you their support. They are not going to come and punish you when you make an honest mistake. Because sometimes we grow by making mistakes. So it's very, very, very important. Let's do what is right. Let's do what you want other people to do to you. So for me, that was very important, that we cannot look away where there are glaring gaps, because we want to create a future of inclusivity. We want to create a future where each and every one of us live with dignity, and we know that we are giving our best to this country and to humanity. So that, for me, really was a no-brainer, and it is something that I will do even in my sleep. Because I have my daughter. I want my daughter to be given all the opportunities. And that is very, very, very important. So really, if each and every one of us, we don't only preach and speak about this, but we open opportunities for people to be the best that they possibly can be. They are here, and some are out there. Get them in here, but let them be the best that they can. Show that you believe in them. Give them the space. They will surprise you. I think that's exactly what has happened at Dbsa, and what you will continue to see happening in this bank, because we are unapologetic at developing our own and at giving opportunities to our own so that they can be the best that they can be. So that, for me, that is the principle, and that is the position that we're coming from as a collective, because really it was not me and me alone, but it was the collective within this bank and the collective leadership and individual within this bank, and saying, I need a chance. They can be able to come to us and say, I want this because of 1, 2, 3. We said, go for it. So that's what we do. We don't play games of budget. You can't go there because I've not gone there. I remember these stories myself when I was actually at low levels. I wanted to do things, and my bosses were telling me that they themselves have never done. I said, but please don't tell me about your stories. This is about me. So that's what happened. So, but really, and then making sure that when they come back, they make sure that they surprise people in terms of what they can be able to do for the company and for this country. When next? April into the bush. I'm connecting with nature. Come back. I really want us to step up as black people and people of South Africa. Because for the challenges that we are seeing, for them to go away, they will only go away when we do something about them. Mm-hmm. We will have to step up as people of South Africa to be able to make sure that these challenges are addressed. And really, I am looking forward to also us, as black people in particular, setting up our own banks, optimally functional, well-capitalized banks, because I can tell you, as professionals, we can surprise everyone in this world and in this country. We must have our own insurance companies. Nothing stops us. When Madam President was talking about our own high table, then it says you can invite who comes to your table. We can't be trying to beg to get into people's table. Let's create our own high table and be able to invite who we want. And make sure that we then leave that table, because that table is a bottom table. Decisions have got to be made, and action has got to be taken. And when we go out and make sure that we do what we want other people to do. We can't keep on complaining. As Madam President, you're saying, we are there. And when we are there, let's demonstrate that we know what needs to be done. Because the experience that you have amongst us can fix a lot of things. Because when you do that, then we will not be begging anybody. But we will be delivering and funding ourselves. That's what Afrikaners did. That's how Sanlam came about. That's how Absa came about. What stops us from creating our own Sanlams and Santams and Absas of this world? They did not need anyone. It was the farmers actually who put together their own monies and they set up Sanlam and Santam. Look at how big they are today. But what are we? How are we creating our own Sanlams and Santams? How are we creating our own Absas, unapologetically so? If we can contribute just about 500 or 1,000 bucks every month for the next 5 years, we can turn this country on its head. Because we won't be begging anyone for funding. We will be able then to set up our own companies and man these companies with our own and audit these companies with our own. That's what you do. You know, sometimes when you see the Jewish community and how they work together, there's only 30 million Jews in the world, if I'm not mistaken. But look at how powerful they are. Their power lies in collaboration and cooperation and embracing and supporting each other. I cannot be coming into a building, then closing the door and shutting the door closed behind me so that I must be the only one. And say I'm the first black, I'm the only black, and be happy with that. It can't be right. Really, really, we need to understand, we must look at each other and say, can we do something together? So when I come back from the bush, I'm hoping that in a not too distant future, I will be engaging with Absip and Dbsa and others to say, can we be responsible for our own destiny? Thank you.
Madam C, in 1 minute, a closing remark.
1 minute closing remark. We have passed a stage. Our democracy is 30 years next year. We've passed a stage now where we blame other people for where we are. We are beyond that. We are now in positions of influence where we can create the future that we want to see. So the prosperity of this nation, the prosperity of this continent does not rely in a number one or who cabinet is. The prosperity of this nation is dependent on you and I. So let's go create prosperity for our country and for our continent.
On that note, I would like to first say the quote that I always say, may we continue to bend the arc of history towards the shared prosperity. In closing, you will hear me use that on many platforms. I came up with it today. But on that note, I'd like to say thank you so much to outgoing and incoming CEOs of the Dbsa. Thank you so much for making time for us. Thank you for the authenticity and the genuineness in terms of the conversation. And we look forward to continuing to work with Dbsa. As the president said, we'll be back for coffee. Please, I only eat croissants from France. And on that note, please allow me to hand back to our distinguished president.
Thank you so very much, Langa, for running a very good show. We have been thinking of launching an Absip YouTube channel. I think we're well on our way there. Dade Dlamini, you have clearly done a good job of preparing, then handing over the baton and preparing the person who's going to take over the baton. I've known Boitumelo for some years now. It was my loss that we couldn't attract her to our organization, but I think a great gain for the Dbsa many years ago, not when she was here, don't worry. And I'm sitting there really with a big smile on my face, very proud of the leader that she has grown into. So we're quite confident that the Dbsa is in good hands. Well done, Madam CE, and well done to you, Ndate. I'm loving what we are saying today. We are saying that we are indeed the ones we have been waiting for. I want to remind us that actually it was the year and the month that I was born that the African Bank was launched. Probably 10 years after the seed was planted by African entrepreneurs who went around South Africa and asked people to donate. This was the heyday of apartheid, and those men and women managed to launch a bank. Despite its many challenges over the years, it still stands today, and is back in the hands of black people. So what we are saying about building our own is not some dream, it's not some idea that is far-fetched. It has been done before. And I'm quite intentional when I say that spagat is figile, any remoting. We should not underplay nor discount the power that we have in our hands today. I think a lot of black professionals occupy positions of leadership, but they are still apologetic about occupying those positions. And it is time that we exercised the power that we have, because we do have the power to drive capital and to determine where it is going to be allocated, it's going to be invested. And I think I'm very pleased that the Dbsa has the leadership that it has, because it means that you are now going to accelerate the pace at which we drive capital towards where it is needed the most. So thank you very much for that. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules. These are working hours rather. So thank you to all our guests for joining us today at the Dbsa. Thank you again to our panelists for a really, as Langa said, authentic and robust engagement, and we really appreciate that. Langa, thank you for doing a good job. I would like to thank the Absip office, the team at the office are the ones really who do all this work in the background that we don't always give them the recognition that they deserve. We want to thank the Dbsa team that also worked in partnership with us to make this a reality. And we look forward to more of these engagements. I would like to wish you all a pleasant rest of day. And those who are here with us today, I'm told that there is lunch being served. Thank you to Dbsa for making that possible. You know, Absip is an NGO, so we can't afford these things. That's why our new CE is going to treble her contribution to Absip so that we remain afloat. Thank you very much, everybody.